18. You'll have to stay over to the right to get by. This is really backing traffic up again southbound on 167 at 18 in Auburn. Northbound I-5 coming through the I-90 interchange. Heavy volume, slow traffic moving toward Seneca Street. Once you get past there, you're okay. Moving toward 520 in the Ship Canal. Southbound through downtown looks okay. In the Northwest News Radio Traffic Center, I'm Brian White.
And now for our forecast here for the weekend, we have Theron Zahn here in the latest notes from the Como Weather Center.
Throughout the afternoon, we're going to have showers around western Washington under gray skies, low to mid 50s in the north sound. We'll call mid to upper 50s in the south sound. Now, gray skies to start on Sunday, even a few showers out there tomorrow morning. And then we get sun breaks throughout the afternoon, upper 50s and lower 60s. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, very typical spring mix out there. You know how it goes. You get your sun breaks, but then a shower's never too far behind. Temps in the mid 60s in our warmest spots. In the Como Weather Center, I'm Theron Zahn, Como News.
Current temperature right now 52 here in Seattle at Northwest News Radio. 97.7 AM 1000.
The following program was paid for by LifePoint Law and does not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of News Radio management or staff.
Aging Options, how can we help?
It's time to know your options and master your future. My life, my plan, my way. LifePoint Law presents Aging Options with elder law attorney and life planning coach Rajiv Nagaich. Health, housing, finance, legal, and family. Know your options. Aging Options is not a law firm, but Rajiv is a lawyer. You should not reveal things you wish to keep confidential in this public setting. This program offers general advice. Having your questions answered does not constitute an attorney-client relationship. Contact your attorney or other professional to discuss your unique needs before taking any action related to the subjects discussed in this program. Now, here is nationally recognized retirement planning authority and host of national public television program, Master Your Future, Rajiv Nagaich.
Once again, welcome to Aging Options. Mark Christopher here, producer of this show, along with the traffic and weather and news that we have during this time of planning a better retirement. As we heard last week, Rajiv's been on the East Coast recording a new TV special about retirement and things to know here coming to public television. So we will have a guest host in just a moment. And what a time to bring in a guest. Designating your beneficiaries. This is going to be one of the topics. You may think your estate plan is complete, but is it? Today, a New York Times story of how important it is to clearly designate the beneficiaries on IRAs and other assets. If you don't, your heirs could be in for some major league headaches here. How about the perils of elder speak? Calling an older person honey or sweetie may seem kind, but instead it often comes across as patronizing and demeaning. It's called elder speak. Oh, this is going to be a good topic. Using a retirement housing navigator, do you sometimes feel like choosing the right housing option for your retirement is like walking through a maze? Maybe a retirement housing navigator can help out. We'll talk about this and what people do. Invaluable retirement lessons. Before you make a big decision, usually best to ask people who have already done it. Today, a story about 3 people who retired early only to realize, hang on. It's a lot of talking, a lot of topics. Anyway, only to realize that their lives were lacking a sense of purpose. Today, each is now unretired. Lessons learned about this and whole range of retirement. Okay, with Rajiv out, it's always fun to bring back Eric Paker to step in. And this is Aaron Paker, that's with a P. Crisis Medicaid and VA. If you're confused about Medicaid, elder law attorney Aaron Paker sets the record straight. This is the guy you want to go to. You are better at defining exactly what you do in your affiliation with Rajiv and everybody at lifepointlaw.com. So provide the introduction before we give you the whole show.
Thank you, Mark. I'm kind of the go-to for Rajiv for anything that he needs done, but my areas of specialty for him, helping those folks that are losing their independence or their loved ones they need help paying for it because the cost of that long-term care is just ridiculous these days. I also take a look at people's estate planning documents, help out with the probates when somebody's passed away. So I'm kind of his go-to when things are too busy or when somebody really needs that help paying for the long-term care.
And you've been doing this for how long now, Aaron?
I started with him a little over 10 years ago as a paralegal and worked my way up to partner.
Now, I guess I always have to ask people in this kind of line of work, is this just a job? Or, do you have a passion? You're really into this. I got to figure out this puzzle for this client. They're all different. I'm going to get motivated.
This is absolutely something you can't just do as a job, especially doing the Medicaid and the probates. All I ever hear is the depressing stories, the people who are going through the worst time of their lives. If you don't love it and you don't love the puzzles and helping people get through that and find a better ending to the story, you just don't last long. It's too much to take on if you don't love what you're doing.
And add to that the fact that he's taking on the whole hour here, filling in for Rajiv Nagaich here for Aging Options. So let's get right to it. And anytime, there's like no rules here, everybody. And 206-421-1000, the phone number direct. You can interrupt Aaron anytime at 206-421-1000. We do have Miguel over here answering the phone, so he'll get you on the air. No experience necessary in the phone calls. Don't be scared. I mean, you want to get some answers. There's no appointment. We got Aaron Paker here helping out. So for designated beneficiaries, and we got to go to break in about 2.5 minutes. Aaron, in this topic, in your experience, is this issue of improper beneficiaries a common problem? Sounds to some of us from reading the article that a minor oversight forgetting to update beneficiaries can create major headaches for your heirs. Have you seen much of this?
This is a huge thing. You know, a lot of people will forget to update after a divorce, and IRAs don't change just because you got divorced. People will put in their will that they're changing everything with a beneficiary designation, but that doesn't affect IRAs. Or they'll leave things to their estate because that's what they've always done. But with new laws that came out in 2020, now that's going to wind up being a huge tax burden on their loved ones. Okay,
and some of us understand that. Now, in cases where you will disagrees with your beneficiary designation, the probate court generally ignores your will. Talk about that and the problems it can cause. Giving your assets to maybe to an ex-spouse and ignoring stepkids, too. That's a mess. That can be a mess.
It can also wind up going to disabled children and costing them their benefits. So there's a lot of pitfalls if you don't review those periodically with your attorney and make sure you've got things done right.
And we often just think, okay, beneficiaries, mom and dad, we're just going to go right to the kids. Or like in a case of an uncle, and he and his wife didn't have kids, and they think, well, I'm just going to go to all the nephews and nieces, and there's like 20 of them. And it's interesting because I've seen this within my own extended family, being from a big family, where they go, but wait a minute, I haven't seen Aaron, my nephew, in 25 years. I don't even know where he lives. Does he need some help? Or is this just going to be, I give him some funds and he's just going to spend it and waste it away? Or is it going to be a benefit here? I mean, these are things to think about, I guess.
Right, especially when you don't know where they are. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to find John Smith, and they think he might have lived in Arizona, and trying to track down people. It winds up being a nightmare for me as an attorney and really expensive for the clients.
I'm trying to think, too, what if you do, if you are somebody and you're trying to think, I'll designate somebody, but wait a minute, all my kids are doing fine. They don't need this. I think I'm going to leave this for Bill, my cat. Do you see much of that?
I don't see that as much anymore. It used to be a pretty big problem. What we see more often is people leaving it to some small charity or church that went out of business 25 years ago, and they never changed it.
Oh, there you go. All right. Okay, that gives you a little idea of the fun you can have, and I underline fun. I mean, think about it. No appointment necessary. Aaron Paker, I say that with a P because you're going to be looking up his name in a little bit when I give you the website, which I'll give you right now, lifepointlaw.com. Here you can read all these articles that Tony, executive producer, put together and topics that we're discussing today, lifepointlaw.com. But ring the phone if you got a chance here, and it's safe to do it, 206-421-1000. Even if it's only your first job and you're like 20 and thinking, I don't need to worry about retirement, benefits if you start early. And I underline that. So any age, as long as you got a job or if you're retired, you can also call as well. All right? We'll have more just ahead. Hang on.
The buck doesn't stop here. Hi, this is Brian Calvert, letting you know that you can learn more by going to AgingOptions.com for blogs, videos, and the Aging Options portal. Visit AgingOptions.com for blogs, videos, and the Aging Options portal.
You know, I'm not a wealthy person, but I'd like to leave a little something to my kids when I'm gone.
Actually, there's someone who gets first shot at your assets when you die, before your kids can even touch them, the tax collector and creditors.
I don't know much about estate and inheritance taxes. I've heard about changes in tax laws, but it's a little complicated, so I just try not to worry about it.
Far too often, the cost of probate and estate taxes forces children to sell off their parents' assets, leaving little for them.
I'd at least like for them to have this house. After all, they grew up here, and we'd like to keep it in the family. They say you can't take it with you. I just didn't realize it was the tax collector who said it.
The elder law attorneys at LifePoint Law understand probate and estate taxes. They know how to protect your assets and your legacy. You can trust LifePoint Law and Rajiv Nagaich. Call 877-ELDER-47. That's 877-ELDER-47.
Along with the fun here of all this talk about planning a better retirement or adding to your idea, we do have traffic and weather. 9:14.
Traffic on the 4s, sponsored by Northwest Crawl Space Services.
This crash in Auburn still causing some headaches southbound on 167 at Highway 18. The left lane is blocked. You're getting by to the center and right. If you stay far enough to the right, you should be able to get by okay, but it will slow you down on your approach to Highway 18. Northbound 405 leaving Renton heading toward Newcastle, really starting around Sunset Boulevard, continuing up toward about Northeast 30th Street, maybe a little beyond there. That's where you're seeing the heaviest slowdowns right now. It's getting a little better as you move toward I-90. Southbound, maybe a brake tap or two, but that doesn't look too bad. Northbound I-5, as usual, a little bit slow through I-90 up toward Seneca Street. Once you get into downtown, it doesn't look terrible. Watch out for some standing water reported on the ramp from eastbound Highway 16 onto northbound I-5 in Tacoma. The left lane is partially blocked by that standing water, so you'll want to stay over to the right to get past that, but it doesn't look like it's causing too much of a problem. In the Northwest News Radio Traffic Center, I'm Brian White.
And for the weekend forecast, cloudy. Most of the rain this weekend will be today. 100% rain chance. Temperatures only around 54. No big storm, downpour, just the rain hitting here and there to let you know where we live. We will have overnight lows in the upper 40s to low 50s. Some rain around, a little bit of rain shower going on in areas of western Washington for early Sunday. But then a dry day. Tomorrow will be the drier day. Healthier sun breaks, not to rule out. You may get a peekaboo of a sun break for today. Current temperature right now at 53 here at Northwest News Radio, 97.7 AM 1000. Oh, wait a minute. I got to get my game plan going here and think about my future and find a job and a career. And, of course, I chose radio. I bring this up because 45 years ago tomorrow with the eruption of Mount St. Helens, my first gig was in eastern Washington. And I remember living in the ash, sitting there at my first gig in Whitman County at a radio station. And the owner said, okay, yeah, this is what I'm going to pay you, Mark. And you have to do your own bookkeeping here of what I pay you, take your own tax out, do all the bookwork, turn it in if it's correct, and I give you a paycheck. And way back then, Aaron, I was thinking, oh, my dad's at Boeing and got all his retirement and this big check or whatever. I wonder what I'll have. And that's where I learned start early. And I did. I took notes from some people. I was fortunate to have older brothers and sisters through the years. But again, and I said before we went to break, if you're young, you got your first, second job, whatever, you're not even thinking of marriage yet or whatever, yeah, start planning now because, man, 45 years since Mount St. Helens, tomorrow the anniversary, it goes quick. So Aaron Paker is here, part of LifePoint Law. He's the one you go to here for anything Medicaid and Medicare, especially all the confusion. He's sitting in for Rajiv. Rajiv is still out here, last we heard, working on a national broadcast for public television about retirement. Perils of elder speak, Aaron, is another topic we lined up for this week, an article that really interested a lot of us because I've heard this, that if you have many senior clients, what are some of the things you do to make sure they're being treated with dignity? I mean, we're finding out saying honey, sweetie, sometimes that just doesn't seem appropriate anymore.
Absolutely. You know, I just did a training at a continuing education that was talking about the sweetest sound to anybody is their own name. They like to talk about themselves. It's their favorite subject. So when you start throwing around the sweetie and things like that, not only are you treating them like a small child, but you're not letting them hear that most important sound of their own name. Mm-hmm. I tried to start out with Mr., Mrs., Mix, and their last name until they tell me, call me Bob, call me John. And also, when they're asking me questions or they're telling me something, my default, even back when I taught preschool with my 3 and 4 year olds, was yes, sir, yes, ma'am, yes, Mix, showing that respect. The only time I really have a problem with that, every so often, I'll get a veteran who comes in and I'll say, yes, sir. And the immediate response is, I was a real soldier, not one of those insert expletive here officers, and they don't want to be called sir. But, other than that, just having that as a fallback that, that's just a part of who I am. I don't care if I'm talking to a 2-year-old or a 102-year-old, that yes, sir, yes, ma'am, yes, mix is a great way to show respect instead of bringing them down to being, that child again. Even if, once they get into dementia and stuff, sometimes their life looks a whole lot like a small child, but they don't want to be reminded of that. Their family doesn't want to be reminded of that. The more respect and dignity you can give them, the better it is.
Are they shy to admit if they feel uncomfortable being called sweetie and honey and all that, or?
It really depends. I find a lot of my clients, they've gotten to the point where they know there's not that much time left. They don't care who likes them and doesn't like them. They're going to tell you what they're thinking. And if it's kind, it's kind. And if it's not, they don't care. It's one of the things I love about my clients. I always know where I stand with them because they're going to tell me exactly what they think of me.
Okay, and this is based on an article that our executive producer, Tony, found here. It's The Perils of Elder Speak. That's what they call it here. Again, calling an older person honey or sweetie may seem kind, cutesy, whatever, but instead it often comes across, as Aaron Paker is sharing here, as patronizing and demeaning. Elder speak. Think about it. If you want to read more in the article, again, this is another one that we have posted. If you go to lifepointlaw.com and click on the blog, lifepointlaw.com. Retirement Housing Navigator was an item here that we decided to put in for the show here, and Tony said, let's go ahead and put this one in here. As you look at Retirement Housing Navigator here, do you sometimes feel like choosing the right housing option for your retirement is like walking through a maze? Maybe a Retirement Housing Navigator can help out. We're talking about what these people do and whether using one is a good choice for you for your next move. How do you find one, I guess, Aaron Paker?
A big part of it is asking the experts. I can connect people with the senior real estate agents. It doesn't talk much about them in this article, but also geriatric care managers who specialize in finding in-home care, assisted living, adult family home. Same idea, just a different setting than when you're looking at retirement communities while you're still healthy. And there are a lot of them out there. They're very good at what they do. Some of them will do bridge loans to help you when you've got a lot to take care of during the downsizing and you can't afford both places. So there's a lot of really good ones out there. I always tell folks, if you're trying to do this on your own, you're looking at a website or a brochure and hoping it's really as good as it looks on the website or the brochure, and then you're signing a contract, and if you were wrong and it's not what they advertise, you're out of luck. Mm-hmm. So it's really important when you're looking at a place that you're planning on spending the last years of your life, you don't want to find out 6 months in that it wasn't what you were expecting.
So would you look at this idea too, like, again, going back to the fact I'm from a large family, and my dad was having issues, and we were like, we need to find him a place to live. And the stepmom at the time was like, well, let me know what you find. And, 7 kids, all directions. And all these ideas, and then it's like, the stepmom got a little spooked because of the fact that we had so many different ideas, and we were sincere about, hey, you need some help. You can't take care of my dad much anymore. He's got dementia, early signs of Alzheimer's. We knew it. And there was friction because we were trying to take that role as the retirement housing navigator. Is that a good thing for a large family, to even attempt, or should they look at just find a pro?
Yeah, the bigger the family, the more important it is to use the pro, because nobody's ever going to agree unless you agree at first that you trust this person who's going to help you navigate it. Mm-hmm. And kind of a word of warning on that, though, oftentimes these families are all looking at these big name places. A few of them are mentioned in the article. I won't call any of them out individually, but we see a lot of those places don't really know the local places. They're only directing you at the most expensive ones that will pay them the most for placing you there. It's good to find a local person who knows all of the owners, knows all of the communities, and can steer you in the right direction.
It's great to have professionals that can talk about retirement planning and who do it every day and have a passion for it. It's not just a job. Anthony Edmonds, hang on. You got some Medicaid questions here for Aaron Paker. We'll get to those in just a moment. You're listening to Aging Options here, Northwest News Radio, part of our Saturday Lifestyle, Northwest Lifestyle Weekend. LifePointLaw.com, the website. Everything is there if you want to follow up on some of the reads here and also look at some of the seminars that Rajiv's got set up here for the month of May, and we'll cover that as well. Hang on.
Traffic on the fours, sponsored by Northwest Crawl Space Services.
Still looking at heavy traffic volume northbound on 405 leaving Renton, moving away from 169. You'll be on and off the brakes from there up to around Northeast 44th Street. Once you get past there, though, things don't look too bad all the way up toward I-90 and moving into Bellevue. Southbound 405, maybe some slight brake tapping, but it doesn't look too bad south of I-90 heading down toward South Center. Northbound on I-5, usual heavy volume leaving I-90 heading towards Seneca Street. Once you get past there up toward the Ship Canal, things don't look too bad. Fire and EMS are on the scene of this crash near downtown Seattle at the intersection of Warren South and 12th Avenue South. Watch out for crews in the roadway there. They're telling folks to avoid that area. Some good news in Auburn. The crash southbound on Highway 167 at Highway 18 has now been contained to the median. Traffic is flowing better in all lanes. Still a little bit slow, but it's definitely improved from where it was a few minutes ago. In the Northwest News Radio Traffic Center, I'm Brian White.
Saturday's forecast, clouds and fog for right now. Eventually, some rain showers will be added to the mix here today. Temperatures will be only in the, upper 50s in some areas away from the water, otherwise mid-50s, so rather cool. Yeah, have the rain gear handy, whatever you got planned. A much drier day tomorrow, even warmer. Temperatures of 60 after a little bit of shower activity in the morning hours. Time has got to be fun. Time of your life, playtime, here, there, and everywhere. It's always best, of course, when you got things more planned and together and you ask a lot of questions. That's why we're grateful to have this Aging Options program for you every Saturday. Aaron Paker, let's go to the phone. We have Anthony here from Edmonds with a question he wants to ask you. Anthony, welcome to the show. What would you like to ask or comment?
Hey, thanks, Mark. Thanks, Aaron. I always appreciate when I get to hear you on the radio. Aaron, if you could shed some light on all this conversation we're reading about Medicaid cuts in Congress. I have family that would be affected by cuts. Wouldn't affect me personally, but it would affect them. And I'm just trying to figure out what kind of cuts they're talking about, how it's going to affect real people. You're obviously an expert on this stuff, so maybe you can just give an assessment from your point of view. I know a lot of it's politics, but what do you see on the horizon?
Absolutely. If I had $100 for every time I've answered this question in the last couple of months, I could retire right now and do that lifetime of golf. The kind of generic answer I give everybody, the majority of the cuts that are being looked at is Medicaid medical insurance, not the long-term care. So it's going to affect those folks that are on Obamacare. It's kind of unfortunate the medical insurance and the long-term care are both called Medicaid because it causes a lot of confusion and panic. Now, where it could affect some of that long-term care, if the federal government stops a lot of the funding to the states, then the states might have to look at, do we have to cut some of those and narrow down the state waiver programs that they've added to the federal program. I don't see that happening anytime soon. I know that Washington is one of the most generous, and there are states out there that try to be more generous, but then they give benefits and say, okay, we're putting you on a wait list because we don't have enough money for the benefits you just qualified for. Washington seems to be pretty dedicated to keeping those programs and even making them more generous. So I don't see a huge hit in the near future for the long-term care. I also see a lot of these cuts getting just cut down by the courts and the states because there's so much pushback from the constituents of the different Congress people that are trying to support this. I don't see a lot of them sticking long term.
Does that help, Anthony?
It does. Also, what about people that are on AppleCare? Because that's sort of Washington State's Medicaid system, isn't it?
So that's the medical insurance program. Most likely, if that's going to be affected, it's going to be adding new regulations like having to at least show that you've been trying to find work and things like that. Again, to the extent that Washington has control over it and not the federal government, we're going to be a lot more generous than a lot of states are.
Yeah, that's good. Anthony, thanks for the phone call here. And, of course, share with your friends here if they got questions about retirement or anything that's a concern here, especially with a lot that's going on right now, as we see there with the current administration. Just to remind them right here, Aging Options every Saturday from 9 to 10. All right, real quick here, we want to remind you we got some seminars going on today, in fact. 11:30, Bellevue. Where are you going to be here? Why not be there for about 90 minutes, a free seminar? Bring a friend or co-worker. Rajiv will be there with a seminar today in Bellevue. You can also plan in Olympia on May 20th. He'll be there at 6:30 p.m. He's got one planned for Bremerton this coming week on Thursday the 21st. You can find these locations and these great places to learn and ask your questions here by going to lifepointlaw.com. Click on events. And again, these are free to attend. LifePointLaw.com. Anybody can show up there, get your questions, your answers. They're a lot of fun. They're not really a seminar. They're a workshop and just a powwow of, wow, did you know this? Okay. News time.
ABC News. I'm Michelle Franzen. President Trump posted that he'll speak with Russia's President Vladimir Putin Monday after direct talks between Ukraine and Russia and Turkey fell flat for a peace deal and ended with a prisoner swap. ABC's Ian Pannell is in Istanbul.
President Trump said nothing will happen until he and Putin get together, telling reporters they may meet soon.
I think we'll solve it, or maybe not, but at least we'll know. And if we don't solve it, very interesting.
The fact that this meeting happened at all is significant, but far more is outstanding than has just been achieved. And meanwhile, Russia's war in Ukraine grinds on.
Last night's severe storms blamed for at least 23 deaths across Kentucky, Missouri, and Virginia. Crews continue to search for victims, and more volatile storms are in the forecast in the coming days. In New Orleans, the manhunt continues for 7 of 10 prisoners who escaped from a downtown jail Friday. Authorities say they likely had help breaking out of the facility. This is ABC News.
When you need to know, Northwest News Radio, 97.7 AM 1000. Now, this hour's top local stories with Mark Christopher.
Still some elevated fog, current temperature 52. Let's get to the top stories we have at this time, and then we'll continue more of Aging Options here, planning your retirement. Kodiak fisherman, a bit of trouble here, sentenced this week to 1 year in federal prison, then followed with 2 years of supervised release for illegally transporting live crab from Alaska to Washington. 64-year-old Corey Potter here, according to court documents, owned and operated 2 crab boats harvesting Tanner and Golden King crab in southeast Alaska. It was back in February and March of 2024. Under Corey Potter's direction, the fishing boats transported the catch to Seattle to sell at higher market prices, bypassing required state reporting and port landing regulations, by the way. Authorities reported at the time the transport of crab. One vessel was loaded with over 4,200 pounds of live Tanner crab, and the other with about 2,900 pounds or so of live Golden King crab. A portion of the Tanner crab was later found to be infected with bitter crab syndrome, known as BCS. It's a disease fatal to crustaceans. Several fishermen expressed concerns to Corey and Kyle Potter about the potential impact of transporting infected crab out of state, but the plan proceeded despite the warnings. During the transport, we're told roughly 42% of the Golden King crab died. It was deemed unmarkable. The entire Tanner crab catch, by the way, contaminated with BCS, was transferred to the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife for disposal. A man wanted for his alleged involvement in a 2002 murder and series of rapes in Washington has been extradited here to the U.S. after previously being deported to Mexico and disappearing. Seattle branch of the FBI announcing this yesterday and getting word to us that Miguel Angel Urbano Vazquez was extradited in May of 2025 following arrest here in Mexico in March of 2023. In press release, the FBI referred to him as a fugitive and that he's charged with the murder and rape of Tacoma mother Sharon Van Gilder in Pierce County, as well as the rapes of 3 other people that same year. Everybody's wondering, Sound Transit, is this thing going to be done in time for the busy times we're looking forward to next year with the World Cup? Appearing before a nearly empty room and with most board members watching on Zoom on their PC, Dow Constantine acknowledging another delay for Sound Transit on the Cross Lake extension there of Lake Washington. And then Sound Transit Executive Director Michael Morgan was even more dire about completing the link, sharing statements that the East Link does have a cost pressure, so it's right at the cap of its overall budget. And then from a schedule point of view, we're not even where we want to be. And the fact that they've slipped a little bit, there have been some unforeseen issues that have arisen over the last few months. Everybody just, again, wondering, is it going to be done in time for the busy times of the World Cup when it gets here? It was promised to taxpayers as part of Sound Transit 2, which was approved in 2008. Original documentation indicated the plan was to create a sweeping extension of light rail connecting Seattle to the east side and, of course, Linwood to King County. But instead, the spine is not finished, and after complaints, Sound Transit had to at least open Bellevue and then Redmond last week without having the rest of the East Link completed. Busy time for our sports teams here. Looking at the schedules for today, we have Seattle at San Diego for another game this afternoon. First pitch at 5:40. We got WNBA basketball. Here we go. Seattle Storm. They'll be at Phoenix. Tip-off at 7 p.m. For soccer, Seattle at Portland at 6:30 p.m. And for the women, it'll be Utah, or make that Seattle, at Louisville, 9:34.
Traffic on the fours, sponsored by Northwest Crawl Space Services.
Still some heavy traffic volume northbound on I-5, now starting around the West Seattle Bridge. You'll be off the gas a little bit, maybe not brake tapping necessarily, but definitely heavy volume moving from there north through I-90 up into downtown Seattle. Southbound doesn't look too bad coming across the Ship Canal heading through downtown. You should be up to speed, maybe off the gas for a second or two, but it doesn't look too bad. Bridge opening in progress, just beginning now at the First Avenue Bridge, so that'll probably slow you down for 10 or 15 minutes. If it's like it was earlier this morning, it might be longer than that. Northbound 405, maybe a little bit better, but still very crowded, very congested. Maybe a brake tap, or maybe more than a brake tap as you move northbound from 169 up to about 44th Street, leaving Renton heading toward I-90. And watch out for some heavy traffic volume northbound on I-5, leaving Olympia, crossing the Nisqually River. The left lane is blocked at the Nisqually River Bridge until noon today for road work. That's why you're slowing down as you cross into Pierce County. In the Northwest News Radio Traffic Center, I'm Brian White.
All right, Brian, thank you for the help there. Let's get the turns on. And forecast here for Saturday and beyond.
Throughout the afternoon, we're going to have showers around western Washington under gray skies, low to mid 50s in the north sound. We'll call mid to upper 50s in the south sound. Now, gray skies to start on Sunday, even a few showers out there tomorrow morning. And then we get sun breaks throughout the afternoon, upper 50s and lower 60s. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, very typical spring mix out there. You know how it goes. You get your sun breaks, but then a shower's never too far behind. Temps in the mid 60s in our warmest spots. In the Como Weather Center, I'm Theron Zahn, Como News.
We still have blankets of fog here, elevated, and even lower than that here as we look to the southwest here from Seattle. Current temperature here in Seattle, we've had some drizzle too. 52 here at Northwest News Radio, 97.7 AM 1000.
Need help? You've come to the right place. Welcome back to Aging Options on Northwest News Radio.
Before we continue, Aaron Paker, that's with a P, sitting in for Rajiv Nagaich. Rajiv getting ready for some seminars later on today. Have a look. These are free to attend. Anybody can attend a plan here, whether you're retired or thinking of retirement or a long way away. These will be very beneficial. Go to lifepointlaw.com, click on events. Show you how serious these guys are about retirement, making it available here to listen to the show on radio every Saturday here from 9 to 10 on Northwest News Radio 97.7 AM 1000. You can call in with questions. Miriam of Snohomish, stand by. We'll get to your call in just a second. Phone number 206-421-1000. This is the best part. No appointment necessary. All right, 206-421-1000. Also, Alex running around the studio with a camera. Alex, I always got to bring you on every show here and tell us, what are you doing here to help make it easy for people to get hooked up to Aging Options and learn more about retirement? What's the camera all about?
Well, so we got the camera here so that you can see Aaron's wisdom, the wisdom in Aaron's face. If you head over to YouTube and search for the Aging Options radio live stream, you can see the face behind the voice here. Every week we're live on YouTube. You can throw it up on your big screen TV, whatever you want to do. And if you have questions, you can comment them there on YouTube as well, and we can answer them live on the radio.
Yeah, very beneficial. So, I always like to bring Alec on here, so the fact that this is going on, and that's how serious this is. I mean, nobody else does this. And the whole thing is, too, and I keep sharing Aaron Paker with people, I say, well, how's it like being at a retirement show and the whole bit and all the things that are being shared? What I like about it is the fact you're not here telling people what they need to do. You're basically sharing with people what is not being told that's out there that you guys pretty much find, investigate. Tony's working for these, topics every week with the stories that we never think about, like elder speak. I never knew calling grandma and grandpa honey and darling and all this could be a little bit of a question of dignity and kind of a put down type of thing going on. But again, they're not here to tell you or modify or change everything. They're just here to give you ideas and think about some things and tell you of some things that you don't know, because we don't learn this in school, Aaron.
Absolutely not. I didn't know any of this when I started with Rajiv. I've earned all of the white hair and the beard that Alec referred to as wisdom on my face. It's a steep learning curve. Even after 10 years, I'm seeing stuff I don't know. I don't know how anybody navigates this stuff without help.
Yeah, and to show you how busy and into these guys are, and the whole staff, men and women at lifepointlaw.com with a campus. And you call it a campus if you ever visit. In fact, they do the seminars there too in Federal Way. Is the fact that, well, if you look like Alex said, go to YouTube right now, you'll see Mark Christopher, nice cash, studio attire, but over here, Aaron Paker's in a suit. You're working today. I mean, you're up here all the way from Federal Way. You're doing a radio show, but you're going to work. You got clients, right?
Absolutely. You know, I work with a lot of clients who work during the week, and my options are stay from when I get there at 5:30 until sometime between 5 and 9 at night so that I can meet with them after work, or I can take a day off in the middle of the week and work Saturdays and meet with those folks who can't get out of work to come and talk to me but still need the help.
Man, how's that for dedication? Against the website lifepointlaw.com. Miriam Snohomish, you're on the air. You got a question, a comment here. What would you like to ask here of Aaron Paker? And thanks for calling in.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for your help with these legal questions. I have a friend who doesn't want to call, so she gave me this question.
Perfect.
She was with her mom in hospice for a few months. Her mother's experience would have been much better if she had access to her money. She would have suffered less, and she knew she had money. But my friend's brother had the financial POA, and he said there was no money, so he wouldn't give any. And she asked him for proof of the status of the finances, and he would never come up with it. Now the mother has passed intestate, and my friend is just not sure how she can find out how much money her mother had and whether the brother is keeping it all, which she feels he is. It's a big mess.
So unfortunately, there's not a fast and simple way to do that. You know, the government is really good at seeing every bank account that anybody has ever owned, but it's harder for individuals at that point in the family relationship and the situation they're finding themselves in. Really, her only good option, other than getting him to suddenly decide he's going to cooperate, is to find an attorney who litigates things like this. They can help file with the court and get a court order to have accounting released to the interested parties, and potentially have a lawsuit if things were mismanaged or are being hidden. You know, that becomes elder abuse in the form of financial exploitation. But it's a long process. It's slow. It's expensive. It comes down to a big, ugly fight with a family that's already experiencing a lot of that dysfunction.
Yes. Well, is there not going to be a way for the government, the state, to know that she has passed and therefore require the heirs to be distributed to based on just common government law?
So there is a law for how things are distributed when there's no will, but somebody has to open a probate. Somebody has to figure out what assets there are. And if it's not being disclosed, or if those accounts were put into joint ownership with the son, it can be really hard to track that stuff down without an attorney and court orders forcing them to release that information.
Yeah, and Miriam, I'll just add to that. This is why Rajiv Nagaich gets out and does these seminars, these retirement planning seminars, for questions like this. So I'd suggest go to lifepointlaw.com. They're free to attend. He'll get one closer to you where you live there in Snohomish here. If you go to lifepointlaw.com, and if anything, it's a bookmark, a great favorite, because there's so many things there between the articles or whatever. And it's like I tell everybody, you'll find something there. But maybe that seminar might be an idea to hit up Rajiv about it. And if not, there's always, it's just weird. And Aaron, you've seen this, the fact there's always somebody around. Well, wait a minute, I just went through that. Let me tell you what I did. And boy, talk about power in numbers. So that might be some help. But thank you for the phone call.
I did have one quick add-on, Aaron. She went to the bank with her mother because her mother felt she had money, but the brother had taken all the documents proving who she was, including her driver's license, and the bank said, we don't know, we don't have proof of who you are, so they didn't tell her anything, which was shocking to me. Isn't it true that if she got a death certificate and went to that bank, that they'd have to at least tell her whether or not she's a beneficiary and whether all the money has been taken out?
It's a pretty limited set of rights that she has just with the death certificate. Really what the bank's going to want is letters testamentary or something showing court-given authority to access those assets and those accounts and that information.
Okay, hang on. We have more of Aging Options just ahead. Again, phone numbers here, 206-421-1000 here. Again, 206-421-1000. And again, the website, if you want to look at these seminars, lifepointlaw.com. Again, lifepointlaw.com. Valuable retirement lessons, another topic Tony's got posted here at the blog I'm looking at. We'll look into that here next here with Aaron Paker sitting in for Rajiv Nagaich. And we got traffic and weather as well. Don't go away.
Hi, it's Brian Calvert thanking you for listening to Aging Options. For more great options to help guide your future, go to AgingOptions.com. That's AgingOptions.com. And select blogs under the free Learning Center tab. AgingOptions.com.
You know, I'm not a wealthy person, but I'd like to leave a little something to my kids when I'm gone.
Actually, there's someone who gets first shot at your assets when you die, before your kids can even touch them. The tax collector and creditors.
I don't know much about estate and inheritance taxes. I've heard about changes in tax laws, but it's a little complicated, so I just try not to worry about it.
Far too often, the cost of probate and estate taxes forces children to sell off their parents' assets, leaving little for them.
I'd at least like for them to have this house. After all, they grew up here, and we'd like to keep it in the family. They say you can't take it with you. I just didn't realize it was the tax collector who said it.
The elder law attorneys at LifePoint Law understand probate and estate taxes. They know how to protect your assets and your legacy. You can trust LifePoint Law and Rajiv Nagaich. Call 877-ELDER-47. That's 877-ELDER-47.
Along the way of all this learning of retirement planning and answering questions, we have traffic and weather for you. Let's get an update.
Traffic on the 4s, sponsored by Northwest Crawl Space Services.
Still looking at heavy traffic volume northbound on I-5 moving through the West Seattle Bridge interchange heading up toward I-90. Doesn't really shake you loose until you get through downtown, and now we're starting to see some building volume on the other side of downtown as well on the approach to 520. So really it's going to be until you cross the Ship Canal that things start to shake loose and you get back up to speed. Northbound 405 leaving Renton, you start to hit the heavy traffic volume around 169, and it stays with you really now until you get past Northeast 44th Street. By the time you get up to I-90, though, things are back to normal. Southbound 405, you'll have some pockets of congestion. It won't slow you down all that much. Just be ready because it could sneak up on you at some points between I-90 and Renton right now. Have a report of a fender bender on the northbound I-5 HOV lane through the South Center interchange. Doesn't look like it's causing much aggravation, but something to keep an eye on. Might come up on you kind of unexpectedly. Again, this is on the HOV lane. Doesn't look to be causing much of a problem. In the Northwest News Radio Traffic Center, I'm Brian White.
Let's check on your forecast. Cloudy conditions and fog. Not to worry, though. There's always something fun to do indoors and outside as long as you got appropriate wear here. Temperatures today will be only about mid-50s here, if even that. Tomorrow, 60. Partly cloudy conditions afternoon. Let's say healthier sun breaks and a chance today, though. This will be the rainy day is what I'm getting to. The temperatures, again, will be a little on the cool side. Keep that in mind with the kids. Northwest News Radio, 97.7 AM. Go back and check on these and update them. Elders speak, is it cool to call grandma, grandpa, and among each other, sweetie and honey and all that? You learned about that. The Retirement Housing Navigator, we brought that up with Aaron Paker as well. Best to have somebody out there just kind of being on the professional side of trying to find a place if a move is needed here or some kind of a special idea here for a loved one. Retirement lessons, Aaron Paker, here in for Rajiv Nagaich. We're looking at this one here. Before you make a big decision, it's usually best to ask people who have already done it. And the story that Tony found and posted here about 3 people who retired early only realized that their lives were lacking a sense of purpose. Today, each is now unretired. So they just don't enjoy retirement and the freedom and the fun, or just they feel isolated and lonely and where's my people and all the jobs I had with customers.
Yeah, you would be surprised how many of my clients that need Medicaid were brilliant and they had these great careers, and then they retired and it all started to go to pot. And Rajiv talks a lot about this nun study where there's this covenant, and I think that's the wrong word, but all these nuns, and they're living into their 90s and they're doing things and they're taking care of people and they're have this really meaningful, filled life. And then they're dying, and the autopsies are showing they had all of the physical signs of advanced dementia and none of the symptoms.
Wow.
I've seen it with family members. They retire and they start having the short-term memory issues and things like that. It's so important to have some kind of a meaningful purpose to your life. Otherwise, all of those other things start to go away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the other one that's really great on here is the financial dashboard. The other big group of people I get are the ones that come in and they retired and they were living the good life and they were actually enjoying it. And then one of them had a stroke or broke a hip and had a bad recovery, and they realized they've spent so much more of their retirement than they thought they did, and they might have been fine without the care costs, but now that they're paying $5,000, $10,000, $30,000 a month, that retirement that was going to last them forever is gone.
So so you bring this up with a client, like if you get to a situation here, it's okay to go back to work. Find something part-time. Take all the skills, take everything you've done in life, and now that you're in the so-called, what I love to call, your encore of life, make it work for you to benefit others here. Like, pay it forward and keep busy. And I guess volunteer, too, would be a good thing.
Absolutely. The volunteering is great. You know, I saw this with my own father. He retired, and he thought he was going to have all these great fun projects around the house, and they got finished, or he realized he couldn't do them without slave labor from his kids being around, and he just didn't know what to do with himself. So he just took a part-time job at Bass Pro Shop teaching hunting safety lessons. Yeah. And it gave him something to do. It brought some meaning to his life. It saved my mom from going crazy all the time just when he wasn't working. So it's never too late to go back and find something to do. Mm-hmm. If you can't find a paying job, you know, YMCA, greeter at Walmart, whatever it is, there's plenty of places that will take volunteer work.
Well, again, think of the skills you have, and when you retire, what you could do freelancer on the side, or maybe consulting. You know, if you end up in a situation, heaven forbid, but you're in a care facility and you're there, and a lot of other people, you just make friends saying, well, let me look at your, you know, what you got planned for retirement, your, you know, beneficiaries. Let's go through that and the things you could share. Karen's worried when I retire. She goes, what are you going to do? You've been on the air all these years. You've been on TV, emceed major concerts. You've had major events you've created, and you're going to sit here over in Hood Canal and just go fishing every day. And I said, honey, as long as I can talk, show me a stage, give me a microphone. You know, Hood Canal at Alderbrook, you know, they got boat tours of Hood Canal and learn about all about, you know, there's stuff around I can still do as long as I'm able to talk and have a microphone. So I'm not worried about that. But think about the skills you have as you're listening right now in your job. Could you do that once you retire as a freelance or share? And maybe somebody can benefit from the skills you have, especially if you carpentry, wiring,
absolutely.
Carpenter.
And hobbies are an important one too. You know, I've been cooking. My mom started teaching me how to cook when I was 7 or 8.
There you go. Yeah.
I would love to retire and open a restaurant, even if I can't. You know, I can be the neighborhood party guy. You know, throwing the barbecues in the backyard.
Yeah.
So finding something to do with those hobbies other than chasing around the golf ball.
Yeah. And then you have people say, "Well, I don't have a hobby." Well. What do you like to do? Well, I watch a lot of TV and movies. Do you know there are organizations that will pay you, Aaron Paker, to watch TV, and then you give your review of what you thought of that show, and is it worth keeping around for another season?
I really hope my teenage daughters aren't listening and just heard they could get paid to watch TV, because you just ruin their entire futures.
Yeah, okay. And even on electronic devices, gaming and whatever, give a review. I mean, there's always somebody out there to help. Okay, more with Aaron Paker, Aging Options. He's in this week for Rajiv Nagaich. Coming up, how you can get a hold of him for his expertise. Oh, what is his expertise, by the way? Well, you're about to find out. Again, the website, lifepointlaw.com. Look into these seminars being offered here in May with Rajiv Nagaich. He's got another one later today. Actually, at 11:30. Still time if you want to just show up. They're free to attend. Bring a friend, family member, co-worker. Go to lifepointlaw.com. Click on events. Don't go away.
Traffic on the Fours, sponsored by Northwest Crawl Space Services.
All right, we found the crash northbound on I-5 at South Center, and it is right where the HOV lane splits off from the through lanes of I-5 northbound. And so it's not really blocking the through lanes, but it's close enough that it's causing some major aggravation trying to get by. And the HOV lane itself is mostly blocked. You can kind of swerve your way onto it, but it's going to be kind of tough to do. That's why you're slowing down as you approach the South Center interchange northbound on I-5, moving toward 405 right now. So heads up, you are going to hit the brakes as you approach South Center northbound on I-5. Further up the road, northbound I-5 slows down now, starting before the West Seattle Bridge, continuing northbound into downtown past I-90 before you start to let loose. Westbound on the West Seattle Bridge coming off of I-5 is very slow. I don't see a crash there. I think this is just weather, but it's going to slow you down pretty substantially as you crest over the West Seattle Bridge right now as well. In the Northwest News Radio Traffic Center, I'm Brian White.
And a forecast for today. This will be the rainy day of the weekend here. Rain showers at times here with temperatures in the mid-50s. Looks like the wind's going to be like 5 to 15 northeasterly. Otherwise, relatively calm. We see a drier Sunday expected after some showers in the morning. Temperatures tomorrow even to hit around 60, 53 right now. Still some elevated fog here in I've got a schedule. There's nothing Karen's worried about. Here I am at home doing all my job and everything I want to do, and yet it's like, Mark, don't be in my way. I don't plan to be. Aaron Paker, tell us a little bit about how to get a hold of you and what your expertise is there with Rajiv and everybody at LifePoint Law there in Federal Way.
Absolutely. So the easiest way to get a hold of me is calling the law firm 253-838-3454, and I know you're going to tell me I have to say it twice, so that's 253-838-3454. And really, Rajiv and I can each talk to just about anybody, but the general breakdown we give folks if they want to ask for one of us specifically, if you're looking at planning and you've got 5, 10, 15 years, or you would if your Magic 8 Ball is telling you the truth, he does a lot of that work. He does the long-term planning for the folks that have plenty of time. I'm the one generally talking to the folks that, they really could have used the help 2 months ago, or they're going to need the help in the very near future, usually less than 5 years. I talk to most of the folks who have lost a loved one, need to go through that probate process. So I'm taking more, we call them crisis. Some of them aren't really crisis, but they're a lot more than simple planning, because they do need that help and they need it relatively soon.
Okay, and once again, the phone numbers to reach you, because I know some people maybe just want to ask, what situations going on right now with the current administration. They're a little worried about Medicare, Medicaid. Can they call you? And what's the number again, Aaron Paker?
One more time, it's 253-838-3454.
Okay. There you go, everybody. Otherwise, lifepointlaw.com is the website. Check out the seminars. Maybe you can hang out and go to one today in Bellevue.
The preceding program was paid for by LifePoint Law and does not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of News Radio management or staff.
Hi, this is Brian Calvert letting you know the best way to learn about aging options is to go to a seminar. Go to lifepointlaw.com and select upcoming events for a seminar near you. That's lifepointlaw.com.
I'm not a wealthy person, but I'd like to leave a little something to my kids when I'm gone.
Actually, there's someone who gets first shot at your assets when you die, before your kids can even touch them. The tax collector and creditors.
I don't know much about estate and inheritance taxes. I've heard about changes in tax